So in the prior video, I talked about various creation and origin stories and some traditions about time and the interconnectivity of everything. In this video, I'm going to talk about European colonization and some of these resistance movements and contemporary practices. So I think we all know that European imperialism brought disease and warfare to Native American tribes, forcing them to kind of move from their ancestral homelands. Sometimes they were enslaved or indentured for the colonizers. Christianity was used as kind of a colonizing mechanism, right? You have these missionaries who were viewed as saving indigenous people from their pagan ways. So if you weren't Christian, then you're viewed as a heathen. Through the 1819 Civilization Fund Act, Native American children were forced out of their homes and out of their lands into boarding schools where they were taught about European traditions and culture, so they had to assimilate into that, and they were told that their own culture and religion was wrong, that there was something problematic about it. However, even though many were kind of forced to convert to Christianity, you still see them maintaining indigenous religions and traditions, so they kind of combined aspects of Christianity with their indigenous cultures and religions. There have also been a lot of resistance movements since European colonization and imperialism. So an example of this is the emergence of the ghost dance throughout the mid-19th century, so the mid-1800s, where this leader had a vision that, okay, maybe the Europeans would leave if the Native Americans would perform a special dance. And it spread throughout the country. And unfortunately, though, it spread to the point where there was a lot of brutal kind of murders that happened. So you might be familiar with Wounded Knee, which happened December 29th, 1890, where American troops killed hundreds of Lakota people who gathered for the dance, women, children, pretty much everyone. And this was a major tragedy, but it brought together numerous Native American tribes. It gave them a sense of shared identity and unity. There was also the creation of the Native American Church, which was based off of the Peyote religion. So if you've heard of peyote, it's a psychedelic hallucinogenic drug, but it's meant to heal and connect people with the spiritual world. But because it's viewed, for a long time, it was viewed as an illegal drug, and there's still a lot of barriers to it, right? They weren't allowed to kind of use that to make this connection to the spiritual world or for healing. But in 1978, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed. So it gave Native Americans the right to express their religion in accordance with the First Amendment, right, which is freedom of expression, freedom of religion in general. So even though this was passed, they still face a lot of challenges when it comes to expressing their religion, and specifically with being able to use peyote in a legal way. You might be more familiar with Standing Rock. So in 2016, it started off as, and it's still happening, as a nonviolent movement to resist the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is like this oil pipeline across Canada coming into the US. And specifically, this one was focusing on it interfering and destroying the sacred lands in North Dakota. So people from all over the world, indigenous people as well, right, they came to show their support. Some of them viewed themselves as water protectors, right, because the land is sacred. They have that, again, there's that mutual relationship and dependence between humans and the land. So it kind of mirrors the destruction of these sacred lands by these oil companies and the idea of like profit over respecting people. So the work on the pipeline did stop for a bit, but then the Trump administration approved the construction of it when he was inaugurated in 2017, and now it's kind of up in the air. So we don't really know what will happen, but they're still pushing for the halting or this just to stop the construction of this. So how have indigenous religions and customs been integrated in everyday life? Well, there's still these traditions of healing where you have like a medicine man use their religious knowledge to cure illness. There's also sand paintings where like vivid colors of sand and other dry materials are used to treat sickness and bring people in alignment with nature, right? That idea of balance and is really important. Women also have prominent roles in healing. So for example, the changing woman is you know, someone who allowed human beings or who kind of created human beings and eliminated the chaos and all the terrible things that existed before. There's also two-spirited people in Native American religions, where two-spirited is believed to be like a third gender, where someone who was assigned male at birth but identifies as a woman through what they wear, the occupations, hobbies, behaviors. So they were respected prior to colonization in Indigenous cultures, but European colonization kind of led to the oppression of these two-spirited people, because the European kind of system doesn't really have like a recognition of a third gender, right? It's more of a gender binary. So unfortunately, that led to the oppression of two-spirited people. There's also many rites of passage, right? Thinking back to the circularity of time rather than the linearity of it. So you have rituals that mark these changes in a person's social status. The Navajo tribes have like a ritual for puberty for girls. There's also like a vision quest with various tribes where an individual is trying to communicate with the spirit world, and it can happen throughout someone's life, right? Not just at one period. There's also many rites and renewals of purification, so trying to renew and restore the balance of everything. It's cyclical again. They have, for example, there's an example of like a jump dance where it's meant to restore the balance of the earth and renew the harmony, right? So things are communicated through your body through movement. There's also a ritual of a sweat lodge where these are ceremonies used to purify and cleanse the body through these rocks. And we see that in a lot of various cultures and religions. So even though Native Americans were killed, exterminated, and they were forced to kind of leave their cultures and traditions and their homes, even if some of them identify as Christian, they still integrate these various rites and rituals into their everyday lives. So maintaining kind of their sense of cultural identity that's separate and that's apart from what's happened with colonization.